Lesson 2.2, Characteristics of Quadratic Functions. How do you find the max and min of a quadratic function? How do you graph using intercepts? So we are being asked to use Algebra 1 review of standard form. So looking at this problem, I do not see a parenthesis with a square next to it like I'm used to seeing in my quadratic functions. I see this as a multiplied out polynomial. So this is considered standard form where we have A, B, C. So how do we graph it if it is in standard form? So the very first step you need to do is we need to find our axis of symmetry. So how do we find the axis of symmetry? Because it's in standard form, we needed to identify our ABCs. The A is always the number next to the x squared. So my A is my 3. The B is always the number stuck to the x, so my B is a -6. My C is always the lonely number that has no variable next to it, so my C is the 1. I need to use my ABCs. The axis of symmetry equation for standard form is x equals -b divided by the quantity of 2a. So I have x equals negative, my b is a -6, so I've got the negative of -6, all over 2 times my a is a 3. So x is the opposite of -6, or a -6 is a +6. 2 times 3 is 6. So I have my axis of symmetry being x equals 1. So I need to graph my axis of symmetry. So I will be using orange, just like we did in the previous problems. You said the axis of symmetry was x equals 1. So here is my x, there's the 1. So here is my axis of symmetry at x equals 1. In Algebra 1, after you found the axis of symmetry, the next thing you would have been asked to find would have been your vertex. And when you find the vertex, you are solving for f of x. So this is our f of x equation, the problem that they are asking us to graph. And we are solving it at the point you just found because the vertex will live on the axis of symmetry. So I want to know what is this when I solve it for 1. So f of 1 is going to be -2. So my vertex is the coordinate point 1, -2. So you said my vertex was the coordinate point 1, -2. So here is 1, -2. If your vertex does not live on the axis of symmetry line that you graphed, you found the incorrect vertex. The vertex should always be on the line that you drew. In Algebra 1, after you found the axis of symmetry and the vertex, the very last thing that they would ask you to do is to find the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is just you finding C. C is the lonely number that has no letter stuck to it. Since my C is 1, that meant my y-intercept is the coordinate point 0, 1. It crosses the y-axis, because it's a y-intercept, at the 1. So you said it crossed the y-axis at 1. So here's the y-axis at 1. He's 1 away from the axis of symmetry. So his partner is also 1 away from the axis of symmetry. In Algebra 1, that's all we needed to find in standard form. So connecting these into a smooth U shape, you have your parabola, your quadratic function. Now we need to find our max and min, domain, and range. This vertex right here tells us both our max min and our range. So I see that this is the lowest point on my U, so this is going to be a minimum, and it's a minimum at the -2 that the green line crossed through. That also means that my range is going to be looking at the -2. My parabola is always above, so I have the greater than or equal to represent the above. This -2 in both of these came from where this line is right here. Now my domain, I see that it goes forever in the right and forever in the left, so my domain is all real numbers. And I'm done. So our next practice problem, I know that this is in standard form because I don't see any parentheses. I have x squared, x, and no x. So this is in standard form, and it's in standard form because it follows the standard form formula of ax squared plus bx plus c. And I have to graph it using Algebra 1. So step 1 in Algebra 1 would have been to find the axis of symmetry. To find the axis of symmetry in standard form, you had to identify your ABCs. A is always the number stuck to the x squared, So my x squared is right here, then secret number ninja 1. My b is always the number stuck to the x. The b stuck to the x is a 2. And my c is the lonely number without any letter, so my c is a negative 1. Axis of symmetry has an equation, x equals negative b all over 2a. So I have x equals negative, I need my b, which is a 2, all over 2 times the a, which is a 1. So I have negative 2 divided by 2, which is a negative 1. So my axis of symmetry is x equals negative 1. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to color it. So axis of symmetry was at negative 1. Here is my negative 1. In Algebra 1, after you found the axis of symmetry, the next thing that you were supposed to find is the vertex. To find the vertex in standard form, you're just going to solve for f of x. So here is our f of x equation. And we're being asked to solve this problem at the axis of symmetry because it's going to live on this orange line. Where on this orange line will it live? We have to test negative 1 to find out. So here's me plugging negative 1 into all of our x values. Solving this equation, I get negative 2. So my vertex is at the coordinate point negative 1, negative 2. So negative 1, negative 2 is my vertex, which lives right here. After step 2, finding the vertex in standard form, our last thing is to find our y-intercept. When it is in standard form, the y-intercept is just your c. So my c is negative 1, which meant my y-intercept is at the coordinate point 0, negative 1. So here on the y-axis is my y-intercept. He is 1 away from the axis of symmetry, so his partner is also 1 away from the axis of symmetry. Connect these with a smooth U shape, and you've got your parabola. Now we need to find our max, min, domain, and our range. Our max, min, and our range are all connected to this vertex. My vertex cuts through the line at negative 2, so I know that I will be looking at the numbers negative 2. It was the lowest it went on the parabola, so I know that I have a minimum at negative 2. Looking at my y's compared to this negative 2, my parabola lived always above. So greater than or equal to is always the above. So these negative 2's right here came from this line right here on my vertex. Domain. I see that it goes forever in the right and forever in the left, so my domain is going to be all real numbers. There's one last problem on the page. This problem is an independent practice for you to do.